2016 Ramon Magsaysay Award. Japan Overseas Cooperation Volunteers. Scarred by the experience of war and tested by the demands of post-war reconstruction, Japan saw among her people the rising spirit of mutual help and commitment to peace and understanding in the world. A sterling example of this spirit is the community of Japan Overseas Cooperation Volunteers, or JOCV, a program established in 1965 by the Japanese government. Now, in its 51st year, JOCV aims to contribute to progress in developing countries, strengthen friendship between these countries and Japan, and cultivate among the Japanese themselves the values of volunteerism, self-reliance, and a broad cross-cultural understanding of other nations. Japanese volunteers, aged 20 to 39, are screened, matched to the needs of countries where they are to be deployed, and trained in the language and culture of their host country. For 2 years, volunteers actually live in local communities, share Japanese knowledge while respecting local customs, and carry out projects of benefit to their host communities. Living, working, and thinking together with the local community are the core principles underpinning the JOCV volunteers experience. The program started with a few volunteers sent to Laos, and then more were sent to Cambodia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. By 2015, a total of 40,997 volunteers, half of them women, had been sent to 88 countries, with the greatest numbers deployed in Asia and Africa. Areas of volunteer work span 190 fields of specialization, including education, social welfare, healthcare, environment, agriculture, manufacturing, public works, sports, and governance. In Laos, Japanese volunteers assisted a provincial handicraft center in the design and marketing of products, in part to reduce the villagers' reliance on poppy farming. In Ghana, a volunteer who worked with Toyota in Japan helped locals with on-the-job training in automotive repair and in a car assembly shop. In Bangladesh, 100 volunteers over a 10-year period improved the preventive polio vaccination rate, thus eradicating the disease in the country. In the Philippines, JOCV volunteers partnered with local teachers in developing teaching materials and organizing learning events to foster greater interest in science among young Filipinos. These are just a few of the thousands of examples in which young Japanese men and women voluntarily immerse themselves in other cultures and help people and communities. JOCV volunteers have improved lives, induced behavioral change, and transferred knowledge to partners in many countries. At the same time, the volunteers themselves have been enriched with experiences they brought home and shared with others, thus deepening and widening the spheres of cultural understanding within Japan itself. For many, big infrastructure projects are the most visible signs of Japan's bilateral development partnerships. Less obvious, yet often more enduring, are the people-to-people interactions that JOCV volunteers have built and maintained over the years. This represents the most humane and meaningful form of international cooperation. A volunteer who worked in Benguet, Philippines in the 1960s summed up the fundamental lesson of the JOCV experience saying, quote, "From working with communities, I learned the value of being a human being," unquote. In electing the Japan Overseas Cooperation Volunteers to receive the 2016 Ramon Magsaysay Award, the Board of Trustees recognizes the volunteers for their idealism and spirit of service in advancing the lives of communities other than their own, demonstrating over 5 decades that it is indeed when people live, work, and think together that they lay the true foundation for peace and international solidarity.